Good evening. Welcome to this discussion on the digital transformation of industry. We're going to have a short panel here for the next 30 minutes or so, where we hope to share a few perspectives on the topic of digital manufacturing and hopefully get people a little bit more interested in this exciting topic. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Richard Kelly. I'm a partner with McKinsey & Company here in the US, and I lead our digital manufacturing service line in North America. I'm joined by three illustrious folks here, and I'll give an introduction to them in just a second. But let me just start by sharing my reflection on this topic of digital manufacturing. It's truly exciting to meet with a number of our industrial clients around the world, both here in North America and in Europe. And quite interesting to see how the discussions with those clients play out in a similar way. They invariably start with a little bit of, okay, how much of this is hype versus reality? But very quickly move into, okay, there's a real there, and what is this going to mean? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? What's going to drive the pace of how this plays out, and what does it mean for me? How can I capture value now, and what should I be doing for the longer term? So an exciting topic, and we hope over the next 25 minutes or so we can share some more perspectives with this group here, and give a little bit of insight as well into what DMDII is doing in this exciting space. Let me start with some introductions then. First, on my left, Dr. Joe Salvo. Joe is the manufacturer of the Complex Systems Laboratories of GE Global Research, and also a founding director of the Industrial Internet Consortium. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Second, Dr. Bill King, CTO of DMDII, and also the Anderson Chair of Engineering at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
And third, Lou Rassi. Lou's a Chicago-based entrepreneur in the space of digital technology and also an advisor to DMDII. So welcome, gentlemen. First, let's begin by discussing digital innovation in industry. Start with the big picture. Joe, can you start by sharing your perspectives? You've seen this journey play out. Tell us what you've seen and what excites you about it.
I think we're really entering an inflection point here where the availability of computing power, memory, and the literal connectivity around high-speed networks is making our ability to connect factories and the knowledge that's required to run factories a reality. We really couldn't do this effectively as little as 5 years ago. It was sufficient to link the consumer in the consumer internet, but the industrial fabric really wasn't there yet. And because of Moore's law and Metcalfe's law, the speed that computing power and memory is being made available to us is on an exponential curve. So that's why it seems to come out of nowhere. It's like, well, why weren't you doing this 5 years ago? Well, it really wasn't easily done 5 years ago. But now we have the software capability and the IT capability to embed this kind of fabric into everything we do in the manufacturing realm, from ideation through modeling, simulation, testing, and then the actual manufacture, service, and even through the decommission step. So we are creating, a true digital thread now that is going to really change the nature of how a manufacturer interacts with his customer and how a customer interacts with the manufacturer. We have often thought of large industry as evolving to take advantage of the scale factors around cost and supply chain efficiencies. But now with this digital fabric, we can really rethink how we manufacture and how we customize designs to individuals. And rather than looking at the statistical attributes of pools of objects that we create in our factories, we can literally understand each individual item and component all the way through the process from design to decommission. So it really changes everything we do and how we interact with data. Another really key change is the commoditization of data. And everyone talks about big data. I like to talk about infinite data because, once again, exponential thinking, the volume of data is going to continually explode. And as we put more and more machines on these networks, and I think some of you saw all the incredible machines that are out in the demonstration bays, these machines create enormous quantities of data, and many of the machines run 24/7, 365. So the world has not even begun to understand the data flows when trillions of objects are going to be making conversations on a daily basis. So the way we interact with data, we're proposing a digital market commons here, will allow us to take advantage not of just the raw material of the data, but being able to use modules of software and modules of actual data that form analytics, and then recombine them very rapidly to create new value. And that's really the differential between software and data. Data, you have to expend energy to find out information from it. Software actually can do work. And that's why the evolution takes off in an exponential way. Unlike someone who needs to read a book, that's a linear process, takes so much time to read a book. With software, it can do enormous amounts of work based on how much energy it uses, not how much time necessarily. So it's a very different approach to creativity.
Thanks, Joe. Bill, anything you'd add about this movie you've been watching closely? What's exciting you about it?
So to Joe's point, we all walk into our daily lives with supercomputers in our pocket. We have access to very elastic and scalable cloud computing resources. In the last few years, computing has just dramatically changed, and I think that's one of the reasons that this is happening now for manufacturing.
Thanks. Lou, anything you'd add?
I would just add is your question, Richard, about what we see in digital manufacturing, why we think it's important. Joe talked about this wave of technology and the disruption that it's bringing. I think happening in parallel with these technology advances is a massive shift in demand for manufactured goods on the planet. So over the course of the next 10 years or so, there's going to be a doubling of demand for manufactured products, a doubling of consumption on the planet. There's going to be another couple billion people that enter the consuming class, and another 20 trillion or so of value add that gets created in the manufacturing economy. And so for me, as we look at this movie that's playing out, we're seeing a real need for innovation and how we design, make, deliver, and service products to meet the demand that the planet's going to have. And so as you see these two forces coming together, it gets to be a sense of very exciting road ahead.
Thanks, Lou. Bill, can you help us connect the dots between this big picture around digital innovation, digital manufacturing, and what's going on here at DMDII?
Absolutely, thank you. So manufacturing generates more data than any other sector of the economy. It's really staggering to think about. More data than healthcare, more data than retail, finance. If you think about every other part of your lives where there's massive data generation, manufacturing, there's a lot more data there. When we talk to manufacturers, manufacturers mostly throw away the data. Where they keep it, they don't know what to do. So we have imagined DMDII as a big greenfield opportunity, a massive opportunity to go and capture this data and to turn it into real value. So what we have done is, with our technical advisory committee, we have identified what are really the sources of value for digital in manufacturing, and how can we create a portfolio of pilot projects that really demonstrate how that value can come to life. So I want to talk about three particular thrusts that we have going on, which I believe are the biggest sources of value for digital manufacturing. First is the link between designers and makers. Second is knowledge capture, knowledge management, and the digital worker. And then third is the digitization of factory operations. So let me briefly give an example of each of these three thrusts and the kinds of pilot projects that we'll be kicking off over the next few months. The link between designers and makers is perhaps the biggest pool of value. So today, what happens is that the people that design things and the people that make things are separated. They're separated by technology, by organizational barriers. In many cases, the designer and the maker work for different firms. Perhaps they work on different parts of the planet. So when a designer has an idea and wants to bring something to life, there are all these obstacles to interact with the maker. And the designer's intent is often lost, typically lost in discussion with the maker. And the things that the maker knows how to do are typically lost in bringing it back to the designer. So how can we get these disparate groups to collaborate? So part of this is about the technology platform for virtual collaborations and providing digital links between designers and makers. And part of this is creating awareness and showing the business case for Design Make Link. The second area is the digital worker and digital knowledge capture. We will soon kick off a couple of projects in wearable computing for the manufacturing shop floor, where operators on a manufacturing shop floor will be wearing cameras and other type of sensors which will capture information about product and process on the shop floor and create data that then goes into the digital thread that can be reused for quality and after-sales service. Finally, the digitization of factory operations is a very exciting area. How can we take all of the data that's generated on a shop floor and roll it up into dashboards and decision-making tools so that midline managers and senior managers in a manufacturing environment can see what's going on? I would invite all of you to look into our collaboration room, which is behind you, where we're showing an example of this, where we have machine tools over on the shop floor here that are generating data in real time, cutting metal, making souvenirs for you to take home, and in real time transmitting that data onto the dashboard that exists in our collaboration room right now. This is an example of the kinds of things that can be made possible through DMDII.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks. Lou, you spend a lot of time with startups, with emerging businesses in this space. Can you talk a little bit about what businesses, be they startups or mature companies, can do to capture and create value from some of the opportunities Bill has been describing?
Yeah, I'll gladly. I'll pose a question to the audience to get us started on this. Show of hands for who's familiar with Uber. Show of hands, who's familiar with Chrysler? Okay. There's an interesting dynamic we've all seen play out over the past decade as the automotive industry gets disrupted. That our notion of a business in transportation and what that actually means changes. Chrysler and all of its factories and design studios and supply chains, complex supply chains, a lot of hard work to design, make, and build a car. Interesting to note, they're valued at about $10 billion. Right? Take a look at Uber. Does anyone know the Uber's valuation today? 40 billion, I think. 50 billion today. Just keeps going up. And so you ask yourself the question, well, boy, which of these companies is more asset intensive? Show of hands, who thinks the most asset intensive business is Chrysler? Yeah, okay. This, I think, is the first challenge for us all. You say, what needs to change in a digital world? In fact, all of us who said Chrysler in a digital world were wrong. In a digital world, data is the asset. So Uber has mastered how to get data about transportation. Who wants to go where, when, and how? Now they're using that data to expand their service from just people transport to lunch transport to grocery transport. And so they've taken this notion of, hey, the transportation industry isn't defined necessarily just by the physical asset, but data is a powerful asset. And so to your question, Richard, about what needs to change for big companies or small companies, it's rethinking how value can be created in their industry and recognizing how data can be an asset to unlock additional value. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is this idea of, look, it can be intimidating to big companies to figure out what is this world going to mean for me? What do I do? And you need to put real thought into what that strategy looks like in the long term. And I know many of the companies I see around the room here are working on that longer term, big strategy question. Same time, what we see is a need to get moving, a need to make some small bets so you start getting into this digital world. Now it leads to the third thing that we see leaders really doing, and that is recognizing they can't do it all themselves, but they're figuring out what are the partnerships they need to forge to allow them to figure out what the future is going to hold, to create the relationships that allow them to be a part of it and figure out where they want to play. So DMDI is a terrific example of how companies are coming together to figure out how they can work together to map out this future. But we think it's only part of the answer. As we look at the startup ecosystem around digital and manufacturing or digital industry broadly, there are still some really significant gaps in the ecosystem in the US. As we compare to the digital ecosystem for innovation around consumer applications of the internet, even financial service applications of the internet, much more advanced than we are in core industrial applications of the internet. There's a lot we can learn. Startups in our technology area and manufacture, they still struggle to get venture capital funding. Like the life cycle's longer, customer acquisition is more tough. At the same time, big companies have a hard time getting access to the startups that might be working on the things they're working on. And even the innovation institutes that DMDI is leading the charge on, they stop at this technology readiness level 7. They don't go all the way to commercialization. So there's this additional gap about how do we get startup activity really happening in a way that's helpful to industry. And so with these ecosystem gaps, we think there's opportunity to continue to do more. DMDI has created such amazing momentum here in Chicago. Now some of the folks around this room and other leaders around the city are thinking about what's next and what can be done. Could be creating an incubator space for startups in these technology areas to set up shop, get access to next generation equipment. We're also talking about launching an accelerator program specifically focused to help startups on digital industrial technologies. The concept is to have global competition, perhaps 1,000 or so applications, from which we'll identify the 10 to 15 most promising digital industry startups and swarm them with resources, customer opportunities, infrastructure, and support to take these small businesses and help them grow. And create an ecosystem for startup activity and innovation in these digital and industrial technologies spaces.
Thanks, Len. Joe, you've seen this with your, in your role at GE, you've seen this play out and been at the forefront of this from a large company perspective. Anything you'd add?
Well, I think some of the points that both Bill and Lou have made is the shift in importance of time. We have to move faster in new product delivery, but one of the reasons is with the ability to see the data, we understand that the world inherently is not totally predictable. There's only a certain aspect of the world that's deterministic, and we can spend all the money we want on trying to figure out the analytic that describes it all, and we will fail because it can be proven that the world is not deterministic in totality. So as time becomes more and more valuable to people, we need technologies that can address the needs of society and consumers very, very quickly in response to real-time events that were not predicted. So when you're in a manufacturing regime like GE, we are trying to predict what the customer is going to need every quarter, every week, every hour, to be honest, because our customers don't want any downtime. They want total satisfaction of what they want, when they want it, and they can't always tell us what that is. So the digital market commons and a lot of the projects that I think you're going to see come out of UI Labs is going to address that immediacy of action. We can't wait 5 years to come out with a new platform. We have to come out with it in 6 months. Well, how can you do that with a fixed team that doesn't have all the skills? Well, you reach out and you collaborate with sometimes people that you would consider a competitor. And if you look at who is in the UI Labs supporting crew, you can see companies that often are considered competitors. So you should ask yourself, why is that happening? It's because we're all understanding the immediate need for speed and reaction to a world that is not predictable. We have oil surges in price up and then down. We have materials that we can't get access to for a while because there's a political action somewhere in the world. We have supply chains that stretch halfway around the planet, and are disturbed by various activities, either Mother Nature or otherwise. So I think it's all connected to this unpredictability of the world and the realization that speed, in many cases, is the thing that differentiates the winners from the losers.
Thank you. Bill, you have the opportunity to work across DMDI's partners, large and small. Anything you'd add that you've seen from those discussions?
I would just say that for big manufacturing incumbents, there are threats and there are opportunities. We are still in an early stage of the digitization of manufacturing as an industry. But if I'm a manufacturing company, I need to think hard about what am I going to do and who are the partners that I need to do it with in order to be successful. I think history shows that when digital technologies hit an industry, there's no incumbent that can do it on their own. You have to grow new things and you have to find new partners. If I am an entrepreneur or a student, this is a whole world of new opportunity. Huge opportunities for wealth creation and new business growth, and that's very exciting.
Thank you. We've got a couple of minutes left. I'll just open it up to the floor if there are questions that anyone would like to ask.
I have one for those established manufacturing organizations who probably have a lot of investment in relatively standalone assets. How do you see the transformation from standalone, not sharing a lot of information, to the vision of totally connected, continuous information flow? How's that going to happen?
Thank you.
Well, it's going to happen in stages, and it's going to depend on the actual industry and the pressures they're under. As I said earlier, initially the infrastructure just wasn't capable of supporting the kind of sharing and security that you need to even accomplish it. But because of these unpredictable features of the global economy now, to compete, they really understand that they have to share information with their suppliers. We saw a phase where some big manufacturers were enforcing supply chain rules on their vendors that were supplying them, and rather than they hold the inventory, they just pushed it somewhere else. And I think that felt good for a little while, but then they realized that, well, overall the efficiency is really not going up. So the only way you can actually get to a more efficient system is to share across your supply chain. That tends to be an unnatural act for hierarchical organizations. But I see it in GE and elsewhere. That is all being broken down now. And the issue now gets around trust, because a capitalist system, it really runs on trust, and you have to be able to understand, you know, who you're dealing with and what the trust feature is. That has restricted how many partners any one company can have, because it costs money to qualify people. So in the digital market commons reality, the society, the community rates each other. That is a much inherently exponentially scalable system versus the old-fashioned way where you send out parties or third parties to vet suppliers or partners. That is not scalable in an exponential world. So I think these digital tools are going to encourage people to share well beyond where they're comfortable sharing now.
Thanks, Jim. Let me just take one more question. I think I saw another hand somewhere over here. At the back.
You consider building construction as part of the manufacturing realm?
The question is, do we consider building and construction within the manufacturing realm?
Building and construction is absolutely manufacturing. And the pools of value that I talked about earlier are absolutely present in the construction community. We've had interest from architectural firms, construction companies, construction materials companies, and significant interest from the shipbuilding industry, where all these problems come to life.
Thanks. I'll maybe take liberty here and ask one question before we wrap up. In a world that's moving so quickly, you know, there's always uncertainty, and if we could predict it, then we'd probably be off on a beach somewhere rather than sitting here. But, you know, if there's one thing you could know how it's going to play out, what are these things that are going to dictate sort of the pace and nature with which this digital manufacturing journey plays out?
Well, I think the value of these collaborative spaces are the size of the community. So one of the strategic pillars that we have really emphasized here is to reach out to all the students and the small and medium-sized enterprises, because the volume of the individuals and the individual ideas, the creativity that represents is enormous to the overall well-being of this community. So I think that's what we need to figure out, how to get these folks engaged very quickly and rapidly. And companies like GE and Rolls-Royce and Pratt and Procter & Gamble and Siemens, they will get the benefit as these communities grow. So I would like to see, you know, these big communities form, and if I could look into the crystal ball and decide, you know, exactly what features and functions they would like, I would do that. But if you look at the consumer industry, you know, Facebook, eBay, they don't worry about that as much. Once the community starts to build, the community itself changes the product. And that's what's going to happen here too. We don't have to know exactly what the product is going to be. Our users are going to tell us that. And then we're going to implement what they need and what they want, and that will be the true collaboration platform.
Thanks, Joe.
I think if I might, I would second the emphasis on the network and how quickly and robust that network can be. I think I would just add that network includes the startup ecosystem, the entrepreneurs that are willing to put their energy into this space versus the others that have been getting a lot more attention over the course of the past decade. I think that also plays into kind of access to capital, the openness of large industrial players to serve as test beds and support these entrepreneur efforts. So I think, Joe, you framed it nicely about the importance of this network effect. I would just add that extends across the full ecosystem, including startup and venture landscape as well.
So I'll just offer one reflection that the workforce is so critically important. And today there is a skills gap in the workforce. This will be met over the next few years. We have a generation of young engineers that are coming out of school now that are extremely digitally savvy. They all know how to write code. They're all very familiar with how online communities work, how reputation rankings work, how distributed teams collaborate in common virtual spaces, how teams work together to define new projects and new problems. And so the people side of this is very exciting, and I think will in part set the pace.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your time. I think we're out of time. We should let everyone go and enjoy the grand opening of this wonderful space. Thanks to everyone in the audience for your questions and participating.